Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your SpaLife Show. SpaLife is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. I am so thrilled to introduce to you our guest today, Hayley Hines. She is the CEO of Soul Sparkle Inc., a global experiences and the creator of the Soul Sparkle collection. Hayley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here.
Well, I love that you mentor executive women to create a soul-centered business and life. A lot of times people don't put soul and business in the same sentence. How did you step into that realm?
Well, I spent a lot of time, a lot of my career in a corporate role. And what I realized is that I didn't feel that I could be fully expressed. Like I couldn't really integrate all the parts and pieces of myself. And so as I've now been traveling the world and speaking and teaching and working with a lot of women executives and women leaders, what I realized is that they really need permission to allow themselves to be that hybrid of both their divinity and their humanity, like that sacred space between those two parts of themselves. And that's been kind of the motivation and inspiration for the work that I'm doing now, is my own personal experience. That's how it usually works, right? We teach what we've learned and from our own experience. So, yeah.
So as you made that evolution, and I know that you're the author of, becoming, a soul-centered CEO, and then you've got also a book coming out here soon about Soul Sparkle Living.
Mm-hmm.
In doing that work, because I know you're also a spiritual teacher, were you a spiritual teacher before that work, or was that also part of your evolution?
Well, I think I've been a spiritual teacher for lifetimes, but
Yes.
In this particular one, I would say that it has evolved over time, right? So I've always been interested and been a student, if you will, of personal development and personal growth. And then really my more spiritual journey started about, I would say 14 years ago, when I went through a big transition of my own life. And that really set me on a different path of growth and development that I'd never probably experienced before. And then really probably about 10 years ago, I started, sharing my steps to creating a magical life and what I've done to evolve my life into one that feels like the fullest expression of myself and my soul. So it's been an evolutionary process, if you will, but I've been on this path for quite a while.
Well, I'd love for you to share some of your story about how that transformation, occurred for you and how you made some of that shift.
So I spent, much like a lot of us, the life that I have right now is it's lovely and sparkly and full of magic, but it hasn't always been that way, right? So I spent a lot of years in a not healthy and not good relationship, in an unhealthy marriage. And when I was 30, I realized that I needed to make some major transitions in my life. And so I stepped out of that relationship with pretty much nothing and started over. And so I've spent the last 13, 14 years really rebuilding a life that looks like me and is really much more in alignment than it ever had been before that. And so through that process and through that, I guess, dark night of the soul, if you will, right? Through a lot of sadness and a lot of suffering, I realized that the life that I've been dreaming of was available to me. And I really started to lay a foundation of deeper self-love and extraordinary self-care. A lot of, again, spiritual teaching and time diving into who did I want to be? Who did I want to be when I grew up? And so over time, that has really become the foundation of my teaching as well. So I do a lot of work with women around self-love and self-care, because I think those are two super, super critical things that we're just not really taught how to do growing up. And so they've been a huge blessing for me and a huge transition point for me, as well as the women that I work with. So.
Yeah, I so appreciate you sharing your journey, because, a lot of our listeners may be in that darker place of their soul and where they are, and just not knowing where to shift and change, like how they can move out of that, right? Because when you're in it, it can feel so dark that you don't know that there is a sparkly future that is out there. So I think it's important to share, our journey, which is why, a lot of times I share, when I was with the police department, and different things that I had in relationship and different things that came up, because, it's so important to share that aspect of it. And I know that you also encompass some transformational travel as a part of it. How is it that you got into the travel aspect of it? And I know you also do international, and how did you step into that? Because that's a bigger game.
Yeah, so it has been a lifelong dream for me, really. When I was in college, I took, a 30-day trip around Europe, and I was just hooked. Like I loved the cuisine, I loved the culture, I loved to meet people around the world. And so ever since that point, I knew that at some point I wanted to just travel and create whatever magic I could in the world. And so it took a long time. And 2 years ago, I really finally gave myself permission to step into that dream. And I called it Operation Gypsy. And I put all my things in storage, and I took off. And it was only supposed to be 3 months, but it's turned into almost 2 years, actually. And so it's been an extraordinary adventure, and really just creating events and experiences around the world and all of the places that I loved. So that's kind of how it all evolved, is from a deep, deep love of adventure and my own travel. And so now what I do is put together really all of my favorite things. So beautiful cuisine, extraordinary cultural experiences with this deep transformational soul work, and a splash of sparkle, and there's always champagne. So that's kind of been the evolution. It just really came from the things that I love the most.
I love that so much. I mean, you are such an embodiment of that. And I actually have to read, because I was sharing with you that I'm going to, is that I love this. This is like the definition of Hayley. And I just love this so much. It actually just fills my soul when I just, read it and embody it and have it. And I really believe that this is one of your magical, aspects, that it encompasses you so much. To say that Hayley is one part fun fairy. I mean, you were definitely the fun fairy. When I saw you, we had this recognition of lifetimes of being connected. So I love the fun fairy. And one part wise sage, right? That, we all have this journey and things that we do, and to really bottle that up to share with others is so amazing. With a burning desire to bottle up and light on fire all things magical that bring women back to their own soul and sparkle within. That is such a, how did you come up with that? Because that is just so, it's intense and sparkly and fun and passionate. And it's just, I love it so much.
Well, I think for me specifically, it's not always easy to define, like, when someone says, what do you do? Right? Yeah. Just like, where do you live? Well, I'm like, my things are in storage in San Diego, but I don't really live anywhere. Like, those are not easy answers sometimes for me. So what I really tried to do was unpack and really try to find some way to define what Soul Sparkle really is. And I think if we're really honest, we all understand that we all do have that beautiful sparkle within. And then over time, sometimes things happen in our life that either dull that, or we suppress it, or we don't allow ourselves to step into it. And so really that combination of words were the things that most resonated with what I actually do and who I actually am in the world. And then I also would say giving women permission. I'm a permission giver, I think, right? To be exactly who you want to be, to speak the deepest desires of your heart, and to create a life that you've been dreaming of, and allow yourself permission to step into it. So, yeah.
It's so beautiful. And I'd love to have a sneak peek into your book that's coming out, especially the part about the guide to creating a magical life. Yeah. What would you say to a woman who wants to create a magical life? What is the first step?
The first step is believing that it's possible. Right? Because I think a lot of times we look at other people, and it's human nature, right? We look at other people and we think, well, she's doing that, or they're having that experience, but that's not for me. I could never do that or be that or have that. And the reality is, I believe that we're all able to create a magical life, and it might look different. Yours might look very different than mine. It's not like you have to put your things, pack your things away and travel the world. Like that might not be everyone's dream of a magical life. So I would say encouraging people to believe that the desire of your heart is available and that magic is possible for you as well. So, yeah.
I think it's so amazing. One of the things that, we talk about here is that designing your life, right? So I have a similar concept with SpaLife where it's like, it's that accomplishment and harmony, and that these things can coexist together. So I love that we're bringing things together that people don't always see, that you can have it all, and you can, bring all of those things together. And you've designed your life in a way that supports you, whereas a lot of people live by default, where they just kind of let things happen for them. How is it that you've designed your life?
So I think I've gone through a series of exercises, and part of what I'm going to be sharing in the book is really the steps that I took that allowed me to create this version of my life that I'm in right now. And it wasn't easy, but it's simple, right? So it's getting really, really clear on what you desire. A lot of us, like you said, we just go through and we believe that life happens to us, and I don't believe that. I feel like life happens for us, not to us, right? Things happen for us, not to us. And so when we get really, really clear on what we desire and really, really honest and get out of that place of what we think we should want or who we think we should be or what we should be doing, those kinds of limiting thoughts and beliefs really get in the way of our greatest joy. And so I really went through a process of saying, okay, what is it I really want? What do I want? What do I want? And I mean, literally staying in the inquiry over time to go, no, that's not really true. That's not really true. What's my truth? What's my truth? And getting really down to the truth of what I desire. And then allowing myself to dream bigger than I ever thought was possible. Like ever in my life did I think that I would be doing what I'm doing, right? And I always thought that might not be for me, right? But then I was available for, well, let's see what's happening. Let's see what's possible. So getting really, really clear on your desires, believing that you deserve them, because that's the other thing too, especially as women. A lot of times we don't believe that we deserve our desires. And so by getting clear on them, believing that we deserve them, and then really outlining, and what I do is a process called a magical manifesto, and I write it out as if it's already done. And so that's really how I mapped out most of the things that I've experienced, is allowing myself to step into the next version of myself before it actually happened. And then it's magical how you then really step into the next iteration of yourself in your life. So those are just kind of some of the things that I did. And so they've been incredibly powerful for me.
It's interesting when we talk about the journey, right, of where you were and where you are now, and setting the intention and moving through the process and just, surrounding yourself with the things you love. And I love the inquiry, of what you're asking about what you really want in your life. I'm finding this coming up for a lot of my clients now, of just getting really clear about what do you want? I mean, just even ask the question, right? Yeah. Because so many times, especially, people who are here to, our sisters are here to give and have impact in the world. And sometimes they don't look at starting with themselves and asking themselves and giving themselves that permission to ask that question and to come from that place. So as you were going through this journey for yourself, when did you realize that it wasn't that you were just, in the journey or thinking about the journey, but that you were actually had arrived, right? I mean, you don't fully always arrive because there's always the next, iteration of yourself, but that when you were actually in the picture that you had created for yourself, what was that like for you?
Well, I think there have been definitely moments that just have moved me, like overcome with gratitude, because, like I said, I write it out and I'm like, and it's going to be like this. And I love how easy it was to da, 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 da. And then the moments come and you're like, oh my gosh, it's happening. Like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the thing. Right. And it's like that moment where you go, holy cow, I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And again, it's all about permission, giving myself permission. And what's been interesting, and one thing I didn't really anticipate through this process, and that was that by giving myself permission, I'm giving other women permission to do their life differently as well. which is huge because I've had women stop me and you know, when I've been speaking or sharing my story, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, you're giving me hope that I can do something magical too. And that was not my intention. It was more just like, this is my big dream and I'm going to go for it. Right. But by doing that, when we can see other people doing life differently and maybe not in a box that we're used to in a different paradigm, we're inspired. And then we're also, we're given hope that it's possible for us too. So
this is so important. And I know that there, is one of our listeners that is like, this is the message that they needed to hear, because we are a reflection, right? So for us to do our joy and our brilliance and our sparkle and to do all of that, it does give permission to all the other people out there that couldn't see the way, right? So just doing the best version of ourselves allows people to live the best version of their self. So I think that is so powerful. And I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about how you choose to live from a space of ease and grace. Because sometimes as people, when they think again of business and the journey, or maybe they're looking from the eyes of where they are now, it can feel challenging or overwhelming, or, the busyness and all of the things that can keep people in the minutia. How is it that you lift, beyond the mediocrity, if you will, of living from that space to be dedicated to ease and grace?
So there's one very particular thing that I really practiced for a long time before I kind of went out on my adventures, and it's really, really simple, very simple words, and it really allowed me to shift my physical body and my energetic body to where I was able to stay calm. And the words are, things always work out for me. I love how things always work out for me. Things always work out for me. It's so lovely how things always work out for me, right? And so what I did was almost reprogram my mind to believe that that's true, which it actually is true. But a lot of times when we're faced in a situation that we feel like anxious or constricting, like we want to freak out, right? If we're able to just take a deep breath and say, wow, I love how things always work out for me. Things always work out for me. Isn't it lovely how things always work out for me? And then we speak it so much till our body believes it to be true, then everything stays calmer and more relaxed. And we're actually better able to make decisions that are then in the highest and best, right? So if we think about when we're in a situation and we tend to react versus respond, I call that the space between, right? So there's the stimulus and then the way we show up. And the more space you can have between those two things, the more powerful you are, the more graceful you are, and the more impactful, and the more you end up able to do life from a place of ease and grace. Because that's all there is. Because that's the space you live in.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And one of the things I love about that affirmation, that mantra about that is it doesn't need to even say specifically what that is. It just diffuses any of the energy of anxiety or overwhelm, because it's just, things always work out for me, right? Yeah. You don't even have to know what that looks like. Right. It's just, I can feel just saying that, how it just like inside your body, just goes like it just can take that as at truth, right? There's not even a fight against that at all. Not
at all. Yeah. And the reality is, it is truth, right? Mm-hmm. And so our bodies respond to what is true. And we might not like the outcome, right? So the key is you can't be attached to the outcome of the thing, right? So for example, I have used it because, again, I travel a lot. And so there have been moments when I have messed up a flight or something hasn't gone quite the way I planned for it to, right? So instead of going into freak out, like, oh my gosh, but I'm going to miss it and I'm going to do this and da-da-da-da, I just think, well, that's interesting. Things always work out for me. So let's see how this is going to unfold for the highest and best. And trusting and believing that things happen in the highest and best for us, whether it be you make the meeting on time or the flight or you get the job or he calls you back or like whatever the thing is, trusting and believing that truth, that things always work out without being attached to the outcome, that's freedom.
Right. Absolutely. And I think it's also a good exercise to look at, where is there evidence that that has happened in the past, right? Because, how many times where it's like, if you didn't go, like, for instance, like you and I met in an event that if for whatever reason we would not have been there, we would have not crossed paths and we would not have become, soul sister friends, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's all these synchronistic things that happen in life where you can't plan that or who we're going to connect or meet with. But so when you miss that connection flight, it's like, oh, who's on your next flight that you were meant to meet, or what was to happen, right?
Exactly. And you turn all of life really into an adventure, right?
Yes.
No matter where you are, no matter what's happening. I mean, I live in a place of awe and wonder most days just because I'm in new places and I'm like, wow, this is so great. But like, what if we just had that attitude all the time for, well, excited to see who's going to show up today, what's going to unfold, who I'm going to meet, how am I going to serve, who am I going to connect with. It really shifts everything into a place of more like you call me the fun fairy. It's like, it's way more fun to do life that way, right? To be on the magic carpet ride and be on an adventure and do life from that place of ease and grace, because then you know that you are always holding your power and you're speaking your truth, trusting and believing that that is what is on its way to you will never miss you. What is meant for you will never miss you. Just such a lovely way to be in the world, because you're so much more grounded and calm and less reactive. And then you choose how you show up. Right. Such a fun game.
Yeah, it is. Well, I have a couple questions for our gorgeous gypsy from the eyes of the wanderer that you are, is that I know that you're intentional with how you spend your time and who you spend your time with. With you moving around as much as you do, how are you creating that intentional of who you're spending time with?
So I have a beautiful circle of friends that are scattered all over the world, that I'm super connected to. And so those are kind of like my sweet inner circle ladies that I do spend, I would say, time. It might not be physical time, but energy and communication. And then I also surround myself with women at my events that also hold the highest intention together, right? Yeah. I'm a huge believer in sisterhood and in what I call the new paradigm of women and sisterhood, where there is no time space for anything other than full support. Like, I'm going to help you make your dreams come true, and I'll support you in whatever way I can, trusting that you want the same for me, right? There is no catty, there is no jealous, there is no competition. It's simply collaboration, support, and love. And so that's my bar, if you will. So if that's not available, then you're not really probably going to be in my circle very long. It's just, you're not going to feel comfortable, right? So that has been a personal standard for me, and then has been the standard that really, I think, resonates with the women that feel called to come to one of my retreats or events, because they know that when they show up, they're going to be fully seen and known and loved and supported and connected. And that's what I think women all over the world crave, honestly.
Absolutely. No, I totally get that. The sisterhood, that's what we have with, the SpaLife sisterhood. And it's like sisterhoods that are merging to create the larger sisterhood. I mean, it's just such a powerful, thing around space. And just, going a little bit deeper into, what we're creating and intentional, that I always look at people's like environment, right? That their environment really does, facilitate who they're being and pulls them into what they want to have. And I love that you choose these beautiful environments for yourself and for your sisters to have this experience. And a lot of times your environment affects how you think and how things, unfold for you. And so one of the things I like to, I'm curious to see how you're going to answer this, because one of the things I like to ask people is that considering environment, right? The environment that we create as a bedroom, the experience that we have there is different than the environment we create for a kitchen or an office area. How is it, what would you say would be your favorite space and why knowing that you kind of move around a lot, do you create certain spaces where like your bedroom looks similar or your kitchen looks similar? Or is there something intentional that you create in your space that has become your favorite space?
So that is an interesting question for me at this point. As I go back to my last full space, like that had all my things in it, right? Because it's different when you're traveling. It's not your own stuff, right? So I would say one of my favorite things to do is to create sacred space for myself. I think it's incredibly important to feel nurtured and comfortable and safe and fabulous in your space, right? So for me, there are certain, colors and textures and things that are really important to me. I love things that feel really warm and cozy, right? So I had a fire, and most of the things that I own and wear I have black on today, but most of the time I have like gold or white and sparkly. Like that's kind of my jam, not only in what I wear and what I do, but it also is reflected usually in the space. And so that always makes it feel like home to me. And I always have really yummy candles, and the bathroom always has scrubs. I have a whole spa line that has candles and scrubs and oils, because that's really part of my own self-care routine. So that kind of is a theme I've noticed. And then what's interesting is now that I'm in this space right now for these 3 months, there's a room in this house that I'm renting that looks exactly like the one I had in San Diego. White couches, fuzzy, sparkly pillows, and blankets that are, those really cozy ones, and a fireplace. It's really funny how reflected it is exactly what
environment is following you.
It really is. It really is. Yeah. So now when I'm not in a space for very long, I also try to recreate some of those elements, right? So I might buy some candles. I have Epsom salts and essential oils. So smell is really important to me as part of that too. And then, I usually bring all of my little ritual things, and I have my crystals and all my good magic things. So that's fun too.
That is fun. Yeah. It's funny when people travel with me, it's like, I do a room setup. Like I make my hotel room my space.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's so important to claim that, and to actually, just have part of your essence there and be part of that. So I'm totally with you on that. I love it so much.
It just helps you stay grounded, right? And like feel calm, and like you are at home. And I think that's been the biggest lesson for me as I've traveled, is that no matter where I am in the world, I can still feel like I'm home.
Right.
I just create that wherever I go. So
yeah, definitely. When they say home is where you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that so much. Hayley, thank you so much for sharing your magical ride through life, and your sparkliness, and all the wonderful ways. And you've shown possibility, even a deeper version for myself, but for the listeners as well, to see, what is possible, and to hold that intention, and that it's not just for the few, it's for everyone to be able to step into that sparkle of who they are. I know that our listeners are going to want to stay in contact with you. And I know that you have a special gift for them. What would that be?
Yes. Yeah. So I mentioned a few of the things that I did personally to help create this version of my magical life. And so I just kept getting so many questions like, well, what'd you do? And what can I do? And da-da-da. So I just put together a really simple, lovely little PDF with the 7 steps to creating a magical life. And I'd love to gift that to them if that's available. And we can drop the link in, I guess, in the show notes, perhaps, where they can download that directly. It talks about how to do the manifesto and all of the different pieces that I've utilized to create magic.
Perfect. Yeah, we will definitely put that in the show notes. And, I know that people are going to, how can they best follow you? Because since you are all over the world.
Yeah, so Facebook is a great way. I'm usually most active on Facebook, and then also a little on Instagram. Also on my website, soulsparkleliving.com. They can go there and contact me directly. That also has all of the events and experiences that are available right now as well. So.
Perfect. Oh, I love that. So, for those of you that are listening here and you're wondering, like, how can I have a more, sparkly life? How can I live the spa life? Where do I even, consider to do that? I mean, we are definitely on the same page to have more awareness in your space about, how are things now, and what is that gap between that? So I also offer you a free gift to go to the liferesetquiz.com. and to have that awareness so that you can start looking at some of these principles that we're talking about what's happening in your mindset, in your space, and are you taking care of yourself? This self-care, it's no joke. I mean, part of what we're talking about here is it's a foundation of taking care of yourself so you can do your bigger work in the world. So make sure you also go to liferesetquiz.com. And depending on where you're watching the show, there'll be, whether it's on Facebook or on YouTube, you can put comments in there and make sure that you tag both Hayley and I in there, because we would love to support you, answer any questions that you have, and have you be part of our community so that we can support you in your journey where you're at, so you can have a sparkly, super wonderful spa life and enjoy all the gifts that there are in the world, because there's so many to be had.
Yeah. Thank you
Absolutely. So Hayley, thank you so much for your time and sharing your brilliance here with our listeners.
Thank you for having me. Such an honor.
My pleasure. All right, listeners, until we connect again, live your spa life. Bye for now.